Hello there. What type of gun owner are you? I'm Gant Carter with GTD Firearms, coming to you with a brief look at 5 different types of gun owners, or 5 different ways of approaching gun ownership. Now, this video is not intended to point fingers at anyone or to try and decide what is the right or wrong way to own a gun. Now, there may be some implications in this video that may recognize certain values or maybe some things that need to be considered carefully. But the primary purpose of this video is to simply stimulate thought, to encourage self-examination, self-consideration as legal, reasonable gun owners. When it comes to right or wrong, the only inherent area is going to be safe or unsafe. As long as you're safe with your firearms, as long as you're not endangering yourself or someone else, then we're mostly good. Also, before we go any further, recognize with me that for the purposes of this video and especially its brevity, we're going to be very general in what follows. We're looking at, in a sense, stereotypes. One type of gun owner we might call the collector. This individual may not shoot any of their guns, or at least not very often or very many of them. They may very well own hundreds of guns and have not fired any or most of them, and especially not recently. For this person, if they do shoot, it is very rarely, maybe once a year or every several months at the most often. There are some collectors, of course, who have never ever shot a gun. They just have an interest, and they're an enthusiast in guns from the standpoint of collecting them. They're just an item to collect. Now, yes, are there guns that are very collectible, collector's items, historic guns, guns that are rare, guns that may be one of a kind or constructed from very expensive materials like gold-plated or something like that. And maybe there's good reason not to shoot, or at least to use those firearms much, to carry them in a holster where they'll get scratched and worn, to shoot them a lot and take them to a gun course. Let's recognize that. That may not be for all of us, but if you have something like that, yeah, maybe it should be a safe clean. But that's a far cry from being just a collector. A second type of gun owner we might call the hesitant or fearful gun owner. This person bought a gun maybe years ago, maybe even decades ago, with the intent of using the gun to be prepared for a defensive encounter. But the gun may have never left the box that it came home with. Or maybe they even have it ready. Maybe it's even loaded. Maybe it's even chambered. Maybe it's in a nightstand, or maybe it's in a safe or something like that. The person doesn't practice. They've never taken a training class. They don't carry their gun. They're potentially afraid of doing so. They're not comfortable with their gun. They're certainly not confident in their skills. Or maybe they don't recognize that skills are things that need to be learned and practiced, and all of that goes into that. But likely this individual may be someone who recognizes the value in training. They may even indicate and communicate to others that they want to get training, but for whatever reason, maybe it's just not a priority in their schedule or their finances, or they got busy after they bought their gun and they just haven't ever got around to a training class, or there never seems to be a training class at a good time or in a good location for them. A third type of gun owner might be called the magical talisman wielder. And I know that sounds like a really crazy thing to describe, but what I mean by it is the individual who owns a gun and even carries a gun, maybe even on their person, or at least in their vehicle or in a bag or something like that. Now, the issues with off-body carry, especially carrying in your vehicle, that's for maybe another video. But all of that aside, this individual carries a gun for a defensive reason, but they don't practice, maybe ever, and they've never taken a training class. They don't have a fear of the gun. They're comfortable with the gun in the sense that they're fine carrying it, and maybe they do practice ever so often, 50 rounds, 100 rounds at the range, but they never incorporate any drills or actual practice into their shooting. Probably they're not very likely to do any dry fire, other than maybe once in a blue moon. So they carry their firearm and keep it at their house with the intent of using it to stop a threat, but the gun is more like a magical wand that just owning it and carrying it and having it loaded and maybe shooting it a little is somehow going to be enough. Now, at this point, it's important to recognize that sometimes it is enough. There are examples of 12-year-olds who stopped a home invader with a gun. Now, often they're at very close range, and they are very lucky in a sense. Now, the gun is the ultimate equalizer, especially as far as personal tools of defense are concerned. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that owning a gun means you know how to use it effectively and efficiently. None of us are born with the inherent skills, even those who may have great talent and can reach great potentials with a firearm. They all had to start somewhere. And most of the differences in skill level, whether you're talking the top 5%, a grandmaster in USPSA, or someone who had just purchased a gun and has just started, is time and intentional, deliberate, proper practice and training. The obsessed gun guy, that's another type of gun owner. Now, I don't mean by that just a gun guy. I might consider myself a gun guy, but I hope I'm not an obsessed gun guy. What I mean by that, especially with the special descriptor obsessed, this person owns a gun, they carry the gun, they practice deliberate drills with the gun, they have taken training classes in shooting, maybe they shoot competitions as well to get the stimulated stress and putting it all in an environment like that. They do all of that, but that's it. Maybe you've heard the saying that for someone that carries a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Well, sometimes for people who carry a gun, every problem that has any kind of fight involved is solved with a gun. This person may not have ever even considered the fact that they might need to have some hand-to-hand, some unarmed skills, even if they are carrying at the moment. The concepts like earning the draw and retention and various things like that may not even factor into their view of gun ownership, especially carrying one and using one for defensive purposes. Or if it has, it's still not something that really they're going to ever get involved in at all or give any real thought and preparation to. Fitness and similar things likely also do not factor into the obsessed gun guy's picture of owning a gun for protective purposes. And now, of course, there are individuals that are physically limited from certain aspects of that because of age or disabilities or injuries or health issues. And that's not what this is about at all. Within reason, this is the gun owner who is only focused, narrowly so, on the shooting, on the gun and shooting. They may have great gear, great skills with the gun, but they've stopped short of things like hand-to-hand skills, mindset, verbal judo, de-escalation, and more. Lastly, there's what I call the tool user. The tool user recognizes that a firearm, at least within the context of protection, is a tool. It's not a magical wand to be waved to stop to solve any problem and stop any threat. It's simply a tool. It's not the only tool, but it is a valid tool, an important tool for protective purposes, for sure. One that ought to be emphasized to a great degree, yes. But it's a tool. It's not something that they're afraid of. It's not something that they're not afraid of the gun. They're not afraid to hurt their gun in the sense of getting it dirty, getting it scratched up, anything like that. Now, there's a difference between use and abuse. I'm not talking about abusing a gun, but I am talking about someone who's willing to take to go through a training class and run their gun hard and to put it through its paces and test their gear in training classes and in their own practice. There's someone who's willing to do dry fire. I'm not saying this is necessarily the person who does dry fire every day for an hour or two or something like that, but they at least incorporate some of that on a fairly frequent basis. They're prepared, but at the same time, again, they're not only that their only tool isn't a gun. They are a tool user, and a gun is one of those tools that they can use. Let's also realize that there are a ton of different ways that you can put these together. There are some that might be a collector, but they're also a tool user, or any number of combinations out there. There are some that will not, of course, mesh so well, like the hesitant, fearful owner and the tool user, or even the obsessed gun guy. Those two are pretty mutually exclusive, but there are combinations that can be made. And maybe you're someone who has a little bit of 2 or 3 or more in you in a hybrid fashion. So, what type of gun owner are you? Drop us a comment below and let us know. What type of gun owner do you think you are? Maybe there's a type of gun owner that you wish you were. And if we can help you here at GTD Firearms with consulting, training, or whatever, please contact us and let us know how we can help you. Where we're training for the fight we hope never happens. Thank you.